Newspaper scholarship. April 1980. After failing out of college, I became a preparatory school student. My parents once again wasted their money and expectations on a 19-year-old man who was nothing more than a Ronin, and a meaningless new life began.
In the middle of March, nodding to my mother who kept repeating, "You can do it if you try," as if in prayer, I, a model of a useless person, kept my eyes focused on the newspaper ad on the table.
The newspaper scholarship. That was the beginning of this whole story. They pay for my entrance fee to a prep school, plus free rent. Meals are included. As long as I didn't tell my parents, all the money they gave me would go into my allowance. It was a heavenly story with nothing to complain about. Of course, I had no intention of studying for the entrance exam. I was taking it easy, thinking that delivering newspapers was just an extension of a part-time job, but I was wrong when I was greeted on my first day. First, I was told to deliver 320 copies of the morning and evening newspapers. In the evening of the same day, I was told by the sales manager that I would also be responsible for the inserts. In other words, I had to get up at 2 a.m. every day. At 3 a.m., I begin my delivery. Riding around a strange town, a town I would never have gotten involved with in my life if it weren't for this, I run around with my route book as my guide. I run through the darkness, not knowing if I'm being pinched or not. 2 meters to the left from the red mailbox, turn to the back and go to the third house, then continue to the second door behind you. The route book turns the town into a line. The deliveryman is a rat who runs along the line. I felt as if I were lost in a huge maze. It is said that the darkness of night instinctively terrifies humans. But deliverymen are more afraid of living people than dead people equals ghosts. Almost every month we heard about a theft or murder somewhere in the area, and we were advised to pretend not to notice them even if we saw them hiding in the dark. Osaka's new residential area sounds nice, but it is a cesspool of poor people who have lived here for a long time and young families who have lost their way in the world. The whole city seemed to be submerged in the cold air of indifference and loneliness. And then, out of the ordinary, bland F Residence 501, it entered my world. Or, more precisely, I realized that it was there. In May, when I was finally getting used to the job, I was even required to collect money. You can't understand how hard it is to collect money unless you've done it. There are very few people in this town who go out of their way to pay for newspapers and then move out. After a few days of newspapers piling up in the newsstand, you finally realize they are not there. 501 was one such accumulation, not again. I was about to pull out the old one and put in the new one, annoyed at how many newspaper receptacles I'd seen today that no longer fit. At that moment, the door opened just a little with the old newspaper stuck in it, and the razor-sharp light from the front door light stretched out. I said, "Huh? It's open." If I had been my usual self, I would never have opened the door, even if I had heard a scream. Of course there was no scream. In fact, it was quiet, not a sound. I was so surprised to hear the sound of the door being opened. So we're the ones who got angry again. I opened the door and kicked the stack of newspapers back to the front door. I think I was out of my mind. No, in hindsight, I may have already been called to it at this time. The owner of 501 was sitting cowering between the wall and the bicycle. It was so discolored and decomposed that you had to stare to see that it had been human. All I remember was the smell, which was intense, and the abundance of flies. Strangely, I have no memory of the corpse itself. All I remember is what was around it. From a small newspaper article, I learned that the owner of 501 was a lonely old man, a former teacher, who lived alone because he and his children did not get along, and that he had been dead for 2 weeks. I was 19 years old and had no sentimental attachment to the condition of an old man who had sunk into loneliness in the city. Perhaps the city's miasma was beginning to take its toll on me, but I was more concerned with the fact that I didn't have to be angry with him for collecting the money. And then it came. Rain is a great enemy of newspaper delivery workers. The sound of rain falling on the roof of my rented apartment is depressing at this time of year when the rainy season is already in the air. I have to leave an hour early when I calculate how much time I have to spend packing the plastic bags with the newspapers. Late at night the day after the 501 incident, I was awakened by the sound of rain. Rain, damn it. I took my kappa out of the closet, got my boots from the shoebox on the first floor of my apartment, and went upstairs again. The first floor entrance was locked, and the delivery man was told to enter and exit through the second floor door. My room was at the east end of the second floor. The entrance is right next door. I opened the door and stepped outside. The stars were shining. It's sunny. Was I sleepwalking? I put away my kappa and boots and went out to do some folding. It was a normal, uneventful day. That night, I was awakened by the sound of rain. What? It's raining. I took my kappa out of the closet again, got my boots from the shoebox on the first floor, and went outside. It was a starless dark night, but it was not raining. You've got to be kidding me. What the hell? Not wanting to complain to anyone, I put away my kappa and boots and went out to do the inserts again. Although I thought it was strange, I did not pay attention to it and went back to sleep that night, but to my surprise, I was awakened by the sound of rain again that night. I stayed still under the covers for a while, but then I realized that the sound I had thought was rain was more like a bunch of leaves scraping against the roof. I wondered if the wind was hitting the leaves or something. I got out of my futon, didn't turn on the light, and went straight to the window to open the old sash. It was not raining, of course, and the noise had stopped. A sickening creepy feeling pierced my back and the sweltering air of the rainy season rushed in, making my heart beat faster like an alarm. I could have stuck my head out the window and looked up, but that curiosity seemed like a terrible risk. The temptation was stopped by a tremendous roar that suddenly came from the next room. It might have been more of a squirming sound than a roar. It sounded as if someone was kicking the floor with their heels. The landlady downstairs came up complaining. The office worker next door also got up. She knocked on the door and said, "Mr. Kauda. What's wrong? Are you all right?" But there was no response. It was like that for a while, but after about 5 minutes, Mr. Kauda finally opened the door a little and showed his face. Then he said to the apartment dwellers, "What's going on? Gather around, everyone." He did not seem to remember anything. The landlord of the apartment went downstairs, blurting out all the curses he could find in an audible monologue. The office worker next door also went back to his room, looking annoyed. I tried not to think about the sound of the rain. Not wanting to go to bed now, I smoked a cigarette alone and went out to work on the inserts as usual. That morning, I had finished distributing the morning paper and was standing at the station to go to the prep school. Out of the corner of my eye, a figure moved unnaturally. It was the moment I jumped onto the express train. It was not until after I returned home from school that I learned that the person was Mr. Kauda. At night, in a room that was quieter than usual, I had a hard time falling asleep. I was becoming concerned about the sound of the rain. I had looked around the apartment during the day, but there were no trees reaching the roof. What was that sound? The question, what the hell was that noise? Combined with a strange feeling and the sight of the morning traffic accident, made it difficult to sleep. It was on this night that I first became aware of it. It was not the sound of rain. It was a sound like a Rubik's Cube being held down from both sides and turned. A creaking, shattering sound began to emanate from the entire room. It is said that old buildings sometimes make creaking noises due to temperature changes between day and night. But this sound was nothing like that. I felt goosebumps. I also realized that I could not get up of my own free will. It was not like I was in bondage, but rather as if someone was telling me not to move. After a while, the creaking sound disappeared. The work came relentlessly. I had to make another delivery to the city in the dark, as usual. I felt really heavy that day, and the darkness was frightening. In this town, there are a number of apartment complexes built by a textile company in the days when they were prosperous. Nowadays, they are a shadow of their former selves, with only a few residents left, and some entire buildings are empty. When I ran up to one of them, I stood still. That's because I could see room 501 that spot. There was a light on in the darkness. Did someone come in? No, that's impossible. No one was there when I walked by. As I stared, I could see the light flickering and flickering. Then the light went out. I talked to the old man at the newspaper store. I asked him to change the delivery area. What he told me was astonishing. He said, "Well, it was quiet for a while, but now it's coming out again. It's a demon's gate. I had it exorcised, but it doesn't seem to be going away." There had already been a number of deaths in the town. Anyway, they wanted me to keep going for a while longer until I could find another one, so I had no choice but to back out. I decided to go to a shrine, which is also my family's shrine, to undergo an exorcism, something I had never trusted before. I went to the shrine, which is also my family's shrine, to have an exorcism, something I had never trusted before. After the exorcism, I received a talisman, but when I was in my room, I couldn't help but feel depressed. I don't think I was superstitious or self-motivated, but I was worried that I couldn't explain what I actually felt with my eyes, ears, and body. Then, on the fifth night, it came looking for his last companion. Mr. Yamamoto, who lived in the same apartment, was a good brother who was usually kind to me. That night, he brought me a pack of commercial ice cream, and we talked until past 10 o'clock, saying, "There's nothing but deaths these days, is there?" I told Mr. Yamamoto about my room, the sound of rain, and the light in 501. "You're thinking too much." "Oh, no, I'm stressed out." "If you're really creeped out, I'll switch rooms with you. This one's on the north side, and I'm fine." "What if I sleep here tonight?" "I'll check it out." I refused, but Mr. Yamamoto was more interested, and we ended up sleeping together in my room. I did not wake up with the alarm clock I had set, but was awakened by the screams of the landlady, who had called me from the newspaper store. Mr. Yamamoto had hanged himself from a pole shelf with a cord and was dead. Since then, no one has died around me. No, since I quit the newspaper scholarship that day, I have no way of knowing how many people have died in that town since then. There are a lot of things that don't add up, but that's the end of this story. What was that sound like, rain? Why are people dying? There are so many things I don't understand, but I think it was better that I didn't know. Thank you for listening to the end.